Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking all about MTELs. This is pretty different for my channel thus far. I haven't done any videos that have to do about early childhood or education or like what I'm doing in school, but I know that MTELs can be very intimidating and overwhelming, so I kind of just wanted to make a video all about my experience with MTELs. Just to backtrack a little bit, I am in the early childhood education program at UMass Boston on the licensure track. So for my major, we have to take 3 different MTELs and pass 3 different MTELs. We have to do the communications and literacy, the foundations of reading, and the early childhood MTELs. So I took all 3 of those and I actually passed them all on my first try. In no way do I want that to come off like braggy or anything. I just think that I do have a good grasp on what the test is going to ask you and how you can best prepare for it. So that's everything that I'm going to share today. I do even have some like prep materials that I use, so I'll give as much information that I am able to you guys today. Before I get into it, make sure you subscribe down below. If you guys have any other questions that are focused around the world of education, then I'd be more than happy to make a video about it. So subscribe and comment down below if there are any other videos you would like to see. And now let's get into it. So I'm going to go through the tests in the order that I personally took them. So I first took the communications and literacy test. A lot of people take this test first because people say that it's the easiest. Personally, I also would say that it is the easiest. The best way that I could describe the test is basically like an MCAS. So if you grew up in Massachusetts, then you probably know what an MCAS is. It's a standardized test, just like an MTEL is. But I really think that this test is pretty much very similar to the MCAS. So for the communications and literacy test, there are 2 different subtests. There's the reading and the writing. You have the option to take it all together in one sitting and they'll give you 5 hours. Or you can split it up into 2 different sessions and they'll give you 3 hours for the reading and 3 hours for the writing, and you do those on 2 separate days. To do it on 2 separate days is a little bit more expensive. Personally, that is what I chose to do, and I'm happy I chose to do it. I'm someone who does not like to sit in one area or one seat for a long period of time, so having the ability to break it up is what I definitely wanted to do and is what I decided to do. So as for what the test is actually asking you, I have some notes on my phone, so I'm just gonna pull these up. But if you see me looking down, that's why. Starting out, honestly, I didn't really study that much. I know some people study a lot, and if you feel like you need to study, then of course, go for it. Study as much as you would like to. But I was pretty successful with my MCAS, so I chose to not study for this a lot. That was definitely a risk that I knew that I was taking, but I was okay in the end. But just a little bit about the actual exam. I'm gonna read this because I'm not gonna remember this. There is 42 multiple choice questions in the reading section, 35 multiple choice questions in the writing section, and then also in the writing section there is 7 short answer questions and 2 open responses. So it's a lot. Like, it's not like a 20 question test, it's not even a 50 question test, it's a long test. So that again is why I would recommend to split it up into 2 different tests. But as for the content, obviously I don't think I'm allowed to like share specifics, but it's what you would expect. There's a lot of grammar questions, a lot of reading comprehension questions, so reading a passage and then answering questions about it. There's a lot about writing, of course, with the writing subtest. So you kind of need to gauge on how you feel with your writing and reading skills. Personally, that's one of my stronger subjects, so that's again why I felt pretty confident going in. I personally think if you grew up writing essays and reading a lot and stuff like that, even just like academically, then I think that this would be an okay test for you. I wouldn't stress too much about this one. Personally, I would spend more time on the other 2. Speaking of that, let's move on to the foundations of reading test. This is a very intimidating test, at least it was for me personally. I had heard just like nightmares about this test and how people take it multiple times and can never pass. I did a workshop, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the instructor of the workshop said that she had a student take it 6 times and was taking this workshop for another time just to be able to hopefully pass on their 7th try. So don't let that discourage you, but also know that like if you don't pass it on your first try, that's okay. Most people don't, and it's a really tricky test. It's very technical, and if you are not reading each question very specifically, then there's a good chance that you can miss the correct answer. So getting into what I personally did to prepare, I did a workshop. So like I mentioned, I did a workshop at my university. We did have to pay for it. I believe it was like a couple $100s. It's not super cheap, but it is 100% worth it. Personally, I don't think that I would have passed if I didn't take the workshop. She told us a lot about like what we need to be working on, what we need to focus on, and how to tackle certain questions that may seem really overbearing at first. So I actually still have the prep materials from the workshop. It was a workshop from Jen Yeager, I believe that's how you say her last name. She has a website, so I'll link her website down below. But she was awesome, she was very nice, and she just gave us a lot of information. I mean, you can see this study guide, like there's a lot in here that you need to know, and of course this is not everything, but she really preps you for what you're gonna wanna focus more of your time on, so I highly recommend it. One main thing that I want to talk about more like concept wise is the whole theory of lights on, lights off. Before I explain what the whole lights on, lights off thing talks about, I want to talk about the two main concepts that I think you really need to be able to nail in order to pass this test. Those two concepts are phonological awareness and phonics. They are very similar names, so they are very easy to get mixed up with one another, but they are two such major topics on this test that you have to be able to nail them, know how to decipher between the two of them, and know how they play a role within one another. That being said, this is the chart that she gave to us during class. I think you guys are able to see that. But basically, lights out is for phonological awareness and lights on is for phonics. I didn't think I was a visual learner, but for some reason this really clicked in my brain and helped me a lot. So if you think about when you turn the lights out, it's dark. You can't see, but you can still hear. So that all has to do with phonological awareness. It's the sound of the words, it's the sound of the letters, everything revolving around that. On the other side of that, if you keep the lights on, you're able to see and hear. So that has to do with phonics. It's about the visual and the auditory parts of words. I know I just went over that very, very quick, so if you have any questions, then feel free to leave them down below and I will do my best to answer them. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I did take the test, so I will do my best to help as many of you as I can. I know I keep saying this, but I really, really do recommend the workshop. Even if you're not able to get this exact one, I would recommend looking into your area, seeing if there's another workshop that may be comparable to this one, or a workshop. I know there's some workshops online. I believe there's a website called Go H Academy. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they offer a lot of MTEL workshops, so that's also an option that you could look into. The last thing that I want to talk about for the Foundations of Reading MTELs, I'm sorry, the lighting just changed, is what you should actually expect on the test. So there's a mix of multiple choice and open responses. For me, when I was studying, I definitely spent a lot of time on the multiple choice, but I also spent a good amount of time on the open responses, unlike I did with the Communications and Literacy MTEL. I wanted to make sure that if I missed a few questions on the multiple choice, that I was able to rack up the points in the open responses. If you go on to the MTEL website, which I will also link down below, then you will have, the lighting keeps changing, it's so annoying. But if you go into that website, then they'll have sample open response questions. As annoying as it is, and as maybe you don't want to do this, I would really recommend actually writing out your answers to the open responses, or at least doing like an outline of what you would say to answer the question. It's time consuming, I know that, but it'll help you in the long run. So I highly recommend taking a close look at the open responses. Also go through the practice test, answer as many questions as you can, and just breathe. I know it's very stressful when you go in to take the actual exam, but if you're all tense and you're stressing yourself out, then you're not going to help yourself at all. So try to take it easy. Worst case, you don't pass in your first try, you can take it another time, and that's okay. A lot of people have to take it multiple times, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just do the best you can, prep the best way that you think is going to help you, and just take the test. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but the last test that I had to take is the early childhood education test. I actually just got my results back 2 or 3 days ago, very, very recently. I took it on November 4th, so I got my results back on December 4th. But I passed. I was so excited. I honestly didn't think I was going to pass this one. I think I felt the most unsure about this one, which actually surprised me because I thought I was going to be okay on it. But the format of the actual test at the testing center was a little bit different than the practice tests online. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what the differences are, so I'm not going to. But just be aware that focus on the questions themselves and not the format of the test, because you don't want to spend so much time on like, okay, they're going to be in this order, or they're going to be this many questions, and then be thrown off by the format of the test at the testing center. If you don't know what the early childhood test is all about, it is basically a little bit of each subject of early education. So there are sections for math, science, like theories and actual early childhood concepts. There's history, there is like reading, like you need to know certain authors. There's a bunch of different stuff. So it's a lot of information and you need to know, again, a little bit about each subject. So it's a lot to cram into your brain and try to figure out, okay, how in depth do I need to go on this subject? Or do I really need to know that about this subject? So it's definitely a lot, but it is clearly doable. So let me go get my study materials, hold on. Okay, I grabbed my iPad because that's how I personally studied for this test, but of course, if pen and paper works best for you or whatever the case is, then do that. But I wanted to show you just how much prep I really did. I did a lot of prep, more for this one than I had for the other two exams. I literally went through the practice tests over and over and over again until I felt confident that I could answer every single question without hesitation. If I got it wrong, I marked it and I went back to it a different day. I didn't go back to it the same day because I didn't want to only memorize the answer. I actually wanted to understand the concepts. For this test, I actually didn't practice for the open responses. I took a look at them and I understood what they were going to be asking. In short, they're basically asking a little bit about not writing a lesson plan, but kind of planning a, I guess, lesson, yeah, about a certain topic that they will give you. So I kind of went into it with the mindset that, okay, that's what they're going to be asking. I've written a lot of lesson plans over my undergraduate career, so I felt somewhat confident knowing that I could do that. Because of that, I spent most of my time on the multiple choice questions. So just to show you how much I really did study, this is the note that I have from prepping. I literally just wrote every single question down and then would mark it if I got it correct, would mark it if I got it incorrect, and so on. I mean, it goes down. But that's just what worked for me personally. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but there are some highlighted parts on here. I don't think you can see right now. So if I stumbled across a question and I was like, I've never even heard of that, or I don't know the concept, or I have no idea about that time in history, whatever the case is, I would write that down, highlight it, and then go back and kind of teach myself about that entire concept, just so that I not only knew the answer to that question, but I would know the answer to other questions that may surround that topic. An example of that would be, I wrote down that Connecticut River Valley has the richest soil in the state. I would have never known that. I forgot what the exact question was, but something about like rich soil. I would have never known that the Connecticut River has the richest soil in the state. So that's why I wrote that down. I wanted to really ingrain that in my brain, and yes. Oh, I also need to make sure to tell you guys, don't do this all in one sitting. You will burn out, you won't be able to do it, or at least I would not have been able to do it. So I highly, highly recommend splitting it up into different sections. So there are 100 questions on the practice exam. So I split it up into groups of 20. I did this at first when I was getting like 12 or 13 correct out of 20 until I was able to be a little more confident with my answers. And then when I started breaking it up into bigger groups. So I would do like 30 questions or maybe even 40 questions. And then for a couple days before my exam, I took 2 days. I did 50 questions on one day, 50 questions on the next day, looked over my open responses, and then stopped. And I didn't look at my test materials until I went to the testing center again. I'm someone who does not like to cram right before a test. It just stresses me out. I feel like I'm gonna have all the information just like running around my head and it's all gonna get jumbled. So that's what worked for me. But of course, if you are someone who crams before a test and it works for you, then by all means do that. But yeah, that is my experience with the 3 tests. I know that every single one of you watching this, if you are taking them, then you will be able to be successful in them. It's hard, it's not necessarily easy. You do have to prep, you have to put the effort in, but you can do it. It is so doable. If you have taken any of these tests and you have not been successful as of yet, then do not get discouraged. There's nothing wrong, again, I keep saying this, but there really is nothing wrong with taking them again. If anything, you are just training your brain to be a better teacher in the future. So I really, really hope that this video was helpful and at least helped one of you out there. If it was, please let me know down below. And again, if there are any other education related videos that you would like to see, also let me know that down below. But yes, that is it for today. Please don't forget to subscribe and I will see you in my next video.